Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, Guiding Light Therapy, where we talk about grief and loss, anger management, and trauma. My name is Carmen Spears and I'm a licensed therapist. Today's topic is coping with grief after a murder. Why is it that some people seem to die too young, while bad people just seem to live and live unto their old age? There are many different types of grief and loss. But how do you cope with grief after a murder? Coping with the murder of a loved one is not only difficult, but it's also complicated because there's just so many other factors that go into play with it. The last thing anyone wants to hear is that someone they loved has died. And it's even worse if that person was murdered. Imagine also, in addition to that, having to deal with law enforcement officers and the criminal justice system while also trying to grieve the loss of your loved ones. Not only does it make it much more complicated, but it also brings about so many more questions and so many more additional emotions. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about coping with grief after a murder. Some of the circumstances that are related to homicides may include any of these. It could be being a victim and or offender in a relationship. This includes intimate relationships and family relationships. A neighbor acquaintance, a friend murdering someone, murder or manslaughter during an agreement, murder by a stranger, or a felony type murder, such as a robbery, a burglary, rape, or drug deal. When a person is murdered, there are so many people that are affected by this death, such as you have immediate family member, you have extended family members, you have friends that are like family, also significant others. Even if the person was murdered and they were the one that committed the crime and ended up getting murdered, chances are they might have someone that's grieving over them also. And a lot of times we don't really think about that. We don't think about the murderer's family. Yes, they committed a crime. Yes, they murdered someone, but that doesn't take away from someone that loved them feeling and grieving over them. We all have mothers that gave birth to us, that held us in their arms, that looked at us lovingly as babies. What about them? What about their grief? Can you imagine what their family and friends must be going through? I cannot imagine that. As you can see, death affects so many different people in so many different ways. It also has a huge impact on communities, and it can have even more of an impact on close-knit or small-knit communities. And there are certain crimes where you will get sentenced to prison. And yes, this is good news. We want this to happen. However, sometimes it's still just not enough. It does not bring back the person that died. When someone is murdered, in addition to grieving, they may also have to deal with other things, such as law enforcement, officers, the hospital, medical personnel, detectives, the courts, and court trials. This is a lot to deal with when you just want to grieve the person that was murdered, having to answer all these questions, investigators, detectives, and this isn't something you can just put off because they need to talk to you as soon as possible. They need to get the information so that they can do their part to work on solving the crime in order to make arrests if one still needs to be made. In addition, there are lawyers you have to talk to, you have to communicate, tell your story to again and again and again. Depending on the circumstances, you may also have to deal with other things as it relates to a murder. For example, a judge, court, days of hearing, and various other court trials spread over a few days or even weeks. The steps or process for murders consist of really any of these following. You might have investigation, there's arrest, charge, arraignment, discovery, plea bargaining, hearing, trial, sentencing, and appeal. That's a lot. That is a mouthful. I could not imagine having to deal with all of that while I'm trying to grieve, process the person that I love that was murdered. And in addition to having to deal with all that in real time, appeals can be made at almost any time in the future. So what you're telling me is if an appeal comes up years down the line, I have to go through all this again? That's just a lot. And just seems overwhelming, overbearing, and just too much. I just want to grieve the person that I lost. That's a lot to have to go through. So, disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer, nor should any of this be construed as legal advice. Losing someone you love is difficult enough without having to deal with the criminal justice system. There's really no right or wrong way to grieve. There's no time limit. There's no certain way that you're supposed to. No one can tell you that, how long it should last. Each person's grief is different. Each person's grief is unique to them. Now, let's talk about some ways to cope with grief after a murder. Yes, there are some things that you can use and do and take advantage of to help you through this tremendously difficult time. Number one, take time off from work. Most jobs are going to give you a couple days to take off. Yeah, it may not seem like a lot. However, make sure you take advantage of that, whether you take it now or you take it later. Sometimes you may need extra days. It might mean taking mental health days, using some vacation time. And if you really need to take time off and you can without getting paid, go ahead and do it. That's going to be really great for, your mental state, your emotional state, and really just your well-being. Spend time with family. Now, I know people grieve differently. Some people like to close off, isolate themselves, not talk to anyone else. However, being alone too much after a death is not necessarily the best solution. So take time to spend time with family, to visit them, give them a call, maybe even a virtual, session. Not only will that help you, but that could also help them. And chances are your family members, they're going to be the ones that are going to be grieving and probably are going to understand it just a little bit more. And they also have the relationship with that person too. Number three, talk to a friend. Your friends are there. Chances are they want to help you. They want to be there for you. So let them. It could be something as simple as hanging out with them, talking to them. Maybe you just want to be with them and not talk about it. That's okay too. They can be a great distraction. A fourth option is going to be writing in a diary or a journal. So now writing in a diary or journal is a great option. Why? Why is this such a great option? Well, this is a great place where you can write down and express your innermost private, secret thoughts and feelings. These may be things that you may not be ready to share with anyone else, and that is okay. Perhaps you may even not want to talk about them because of, the circumstance of the murder. I mean, it's difficult to talk about that with someone, explain it, just so many different things going on. So get a journal, get a diary, and just go ahead and use it. I would just say, make sure you keep it in, a safe location, a safe place. Number four, take up a hobby. There may be times when you need additional types of distractions. And a hobby could be the perfect way to get your mind off of it. Even if it's just for a couple of hours, it's still going to help. Think of some of your current hobbies. Maybe some hobbies that you haven't had, time to do. Perhaps there's something that you've always wanted to try, you've always wanted to do, but maybe just haven't had the time. Now's the time to go ahead and explore it. And it's also nice if you can have, a couple of hobbies, things you can do by yourself, with other people, inside and outside. So that way they can fit, different circumstances. Number six, get involved. Getting involved in an organization or club that your loved one helped is a great way to help you to really just feel like close to them because you're participating in something that meant a lot to them, that they held, close to their heart. And while you're doing this, you may be helping other people too. Another option could be within this, maybe even just starting a cause, developing a scholarship, or holding an event in their name to honor or remember them. This allows you to direct your grief in a healthy